Admiral. Admiral. Admiral.
Well, hello there. It's your old buddy, Admiral Teag, and I had something to share with you that I came across in my investigation of the NuTrek propaganda. I've been through a lot in life as far as following Star Trek, seen some strange things, been from one side of the final frontier to the other. But this Star Trek source, Crime Recaps, is like nothing I've seen before. It is bizarre. It is unfathomable. Their channel description says that they are from the United States and joined in March of 2022. Crime Recaps has 2.45 thousand subscribers, up 3,500 since I started covering them just 1 month ago. They seem to be an arm of CBS, and I had thought this was CBS overseas. Mostly, they cover the crime shows on CBS, but they also cover Star Trek. This is always delivered to us through an AI, which has been poorly programmed. So poorly programmed that I had thought that this was the South Korean or Japanese version of CBS just doing publicity and dumping it into an AI translator. But it seems to be from America. Now, I don't know what's up with this YouTube channel. There's no human voice to associate what I hear with, but the information they give us, it's usually pretty insightful. Now, they beat around the bush a lot, and they absolutely do not know how to program their AI text-to-speech app because they misgender people, and they seem to know nothing about Star Trek. Something will be cutting to their video from time to time to prove. You just have to see it for yourself. But here we go with Star Trek Theory, Strange New Worlds fixes some big mistakes. And this is about how Captain Pike was a jerk until they fixed him. Here we go.
It looks like Star Trek Strange New Worlds casting makes up for a rude thing Captain Pike said in the first Star Trek pilot.
Now this already makes no sense, because how could the casting make up for dialogue?
This is great, since the franchise hasn't always done a good job of treating men and women equally.
That is an insane thing to say about the most progressive show on television. It would also be hard to say that Star Trek wasn't always 20 to 30 to 50 years ahead of society in the way it treated everyone, especially if you go back to the real Star Trek shows that started in 1967. Pay no attention.
On that note,
pay no attention to this Terry Matalas garbage we see now. But let's hear a little more from Crime Recaps. And boy, this show is a crime. We're talking Strange New Worlds. And by the way, if you could hit the like and follow buttons, and maybe that notification bell, you'd really be doing me a favor, because we're stronger with you than without you in our fight to save Star Trek.
Let's look at how Strange New Worlds fixed Captain Pike's awful Star Trek insult. We'll also
What could that have been? I think I know where they're gonna go with this.
look at how Strange New Worlds has a secret Kirk and Nurse Chapel connection.
No one cares.
To start with, Strange New Worlds has a great chance of keeping up with the times. Strange New
What does that mean?
Worlds follows the adventures of the Enterprise crew.
Okay, now here's something that you just have to see is our Enterprise crew. It's an Enterprise crew, all right. It's an Enterprise crew. But, Crime Recaps here knows nothing about Star Trek, really whatsoever. But let's let them go on here with their rant about, what we need to know about how Star Trek has fixed itself after all these misguided years.
Who first showed up in the unaired pilot, The Cage. It's both a prequel to Star Trek, the original series, and a modern Trek show.
It's a prequel to a prequel that's a sequel to a sequel.
With modern issues. And
yes, those are the buzzwords to be afraid of. It reflects the world we live in today. If your fantasy show is doing that as its top priority, stay away.
Safe to say that this show finally provides some modern solutions that we've been dying to see in the previous Star Trek content. It doesn't.
What have we been missing out on until the NuTrek people took over in our previous Star Trek content? We had everything we wanted. In fact, they had to misname this mislabeled and misadvertised show as Strange New Worlds, because the problem people were having with Star Trek, aside from the terrible story, bad acting, and awful messaging and virtue signaling, was that it wasn't Star Trek at all. They never went to a planet just to explore. Ever. They never, ever went to a planet just to explore. So with this Strange New Worlds show, they do a tip of the hat to it in the title, and every once in a great while, for reasons coincidental to exploring, like to fix a telespace like telescope array or a communications array in space, there's one episode where they go fix a 5G tower in space on Star Trek Discovery. That's the only time they go to a planet in like 3 seasons of that piece of shit show. That's so Strange New Worlds, a bait and switch title, which they really have barely done much on. And when they did go to planets, whoa, the things we saw on Strange New Worlds. Ascension? Oh.
A great job of fixing some of the problems with the 1960s Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry's.
This assumes that any of us think that there are problems with the 1960s Star Trek. Is it perfect? Not always. I mean, the thing about the 1960s Star Trek is that it sometimes was perfect. There are perfect episodes of Star Trek, the original series. There are perfect episodes. There are episodes like The Doomsday Machine, The Gamesters of Triskelion, A Piece of the Action. The titles of the episodes roll right off the tongue. There are so many perfect episodes of Star Trek, the original series. Yet these people would have us believe that it needs fixing. Now, why they are of this belief is beyond me, but let's let them continue.
Star Trek was very forward-thinking and progressive in its peaceful anti-war stance and commitment to racial representation, but it really missed the mark when it came to gender equality. For example, the last episode of the show, Turnabout Intruder, was about an old flame of
Turnabout Intruder may be the only episode of original Star Trek that would have occurred to the people who write NuTrek. It was terrible, and Gene Roddenberry was barely involved in season 3 of Star Trek, where he was trying to walk away. If we only got the movies because Gene Roddenberry didn't have a lot of success in other things. He was a great TV writer, but the thing was, he was at his best when he collaborated. Like, Gene did not invent the Klingons. He was smart enough to let his writers do their thing most of the time. And then there seems to be an aspect of Gene Roddenberry that was a little different than that. But for the most part, we're trying to say that Star Trek was fundamentally flawed with this Star Trek theory thing.
Captain Kirk's Dr. Janice Lester, who went to great lengths to become one of Star Trek's female captains by swapping
This is crazy.
bodies with Kirk.
This is the Kirk they are showing us to give you an idea of where we're at with this sort of presentation. All right, now this is a Kirk, but not a real Kirk, and not the Kirk that we are talking about in the least.
Strange attitude toward women in senior Starfleet positions was also shown in Star Trek's unaired pilot when Christopher Pike.
Okay, now let's make clear that this is not the Pike they are talking about. It's a different actor, and it's not the Star Trek they're talking about. It's a different Star Trek, and that the pilot that didn't air. It did not air.
Mike said he couldn't get used to seeing women on the bridge.
In 1966, having a woman as second in command of the ship was remarkable. It had to be said for the audience. For the audience. Because he said it doesn't change the fact that Majel Barrett was there as second in command of the Enterprise, the original number 1.
But he made an exception for number 1. Strange New Worlds can finally fix.
He made an exception. He was not a rigid, linear thinker. He made a comment that was completely meta. And in an unaired pilot that was shown in an episode of Star Trek known as The Menagerie, where Pike was a crippled hero. A hero, really, to Starfleet. And this is how they're treating him.
The biggest problem with the original Star Trek series by bringing back Pike and
This is not the Pike you're talking about.
number one coming
It's not the number one we are talking about.
up. Strange New Worlds diversity fixes Pike's insult in
He didn't insult anyone. He said something that made sense 58 years ago when that pilot was made.
The Cage. Since the episode was never shown in its entirety and the
Right? See, here's the point. Since they never really said this,
footage was instead used in The Menagerie, Strange New Worlds can easily avoid the in the original Pike.
I don't understand why that bleep was there.
Instead, the casting is done in a variety of ways that show the Anson Mount Pike in a much better light.
No, I disagree. Anson Mount's Pike and the Pike in the chair have about the same range of emotion. We saw the trailer for the next season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and it featured his crew disrespecting and mocking him as always. He is not presented in a good light. He is presented as a very foolish and ineffective captain who only succeeds by letting his subordinates call the shots on the Enterprise. He does not do very well in his original ideas, and when the Enterprise decides to let the planet in ascension go on with this infanticide that they're engaged in, he says, who are we to judge? You know what? That was one terrible story in Ascension.
There are a lot more women in key positions on Starfleet than there were on Captain Kirk's Enterprise.
And Starfleet is evil now.
Or on Pike's during The Cage.
Where they were on an altruistic mission and rescued people.
Aside from characters like Number One, Uhura, and Chapel, there are...
So aside from about half of the 10 people who made up the primary cast,
are also new characters like Security Officer Lon Noonien Singh and...
a new character. What a... Yeah. We just took Khan, made him female, and had him act like he did in Beyond because that Khan would switch teams, like we know this character will.
Helmsman Erica Ortegas.
Ortegas, not a real Spanish name, a feminized version of the name Ortega made up for the show. So, also, what this haircut on Ortegas. Let me tell you something, man. They throw this haircut at you like a grenade. Let's take another look at her. So here we have some great footage from old Star Trek, remembering the good old days, and then we're seeing what we get now, and that is no kind of Uhura. And here we have Chapel, who wears a cat suit in the name of diversity. She wears a cat suit in the name of diversity. And then we have Ortegas, and Ortegas is not there for us to enjoy the way she looks.
And Helmsman Erica Ortegas.
Look at that haircut. That is thrown at you like a grenade to distract from the fact that this show sucks. It's a conspicuously horrible haircut. It does nothing to make her look better. It does nothing to, tell us anything about the character, except that she has a shitty haircut. A really, really shitty haircut.
On top of this, in Strange New Worlds, all of these characters get as much or more screen time.
When Anson Mount kind of squints and frowns, he looks a little bit like Alec Baldwin, doesn't he?
As many of the male crew members. In SNW Season 1, 2 of the main character arcs are Lon's bad experience with the Gorn and...
Yeah, alright. This was all hard to watch and looked like shit.
And Uhura's doubts about a...
This is the Uhura they want for us. This is the Uhura they think we deserve. I mean, this is one hell of a change in gears from Nichelle Nichols. There is no respect for the lore here. This is not a sufficient Uhura
career in Starfleet. It's a subtle change that gets around this.
And why didn't we gender swap and race swap Uhura since we do it to everyone else? Uhura at least stayed the same gender and race. We can complain that the actress is not a good fit to replace Nichelle Nichols, but at least they didn't change core traits. We can only wonder why Uhura stayed the same.
Strange way the original Pike didn't want women on the bridge of a...
So instead, they have now replaced all male characters except Spock with women. And the Enterprise, the most inept ship in evil matriarchy Starfleet, is run by women. So when they're doing these evil things, when they're enabling the planet that has infanticide, remember who's calling the shots for this evil federation. It's a matriarchy.
A starship, and puts the female officers at the center of the story.
And in the center of the blame for the immoral things that we see.
Number 1's bigger role in Season 2 of SNW.
Number 1, revealed to be a genetically enhanced liar who is going beneath the standards of Starfleet by being an augment from a planet that is banned from the Federation. She has revealed this when it suited her. There have been no consequences, and she and Pike and several other crew members are now engaged in a conspiratorial lie to defy Starfleet policy. Policy! Not Starfleet's, this is a law within Starfleet. We do not let people who are augmented from this planet join our fleet. And this is the second in command. This has the makings of an insurrection. This has the makings of an infiltration and destruction of Starfleet. This is the flagship. The number 1 officer after the captain, your XO, is a Manchurian candidate, is a mole, potentially, and you're not even going to question it? How can she remain in Starfleet?
Should also help fix Pike's rude comment and the insulting thing.
Yeah, he might be a little rude, but she's a fucking traitor.
He said. What's more, how Strange New World Season 2 can address the cage insult directly.
We have dwelt for 3.5 minutes on something that Captain Pike said once, and he immediately apologized for it in the episode. He said he was wrong to say it right then and there. You know, part of Star Trek was about pushing us into the future when there was a vision and a plan, and Captain Pike in the cage and the menagerie, as we saw him, he was a little old-fashioned, and it was going to be a different kind of show. And that show was not greenlit. That show was sent back for more development and a better captain.
Strange New World Season 1 ended on a cliffhanger, which is the perfect way for the show to directly respond to the cage's insults.
How many times have we referred to the word insult? This is the second time in 15 seconds they've said the cage is insult.
Since Anson Mount's Captain Pike is so likable, it would be a mistake to turn him into a repentant...
I don't know that Captain Pike is likable. I don't hate him, but I think he's more pitiable. I feel sorry for this Viagra salesman who wanders around his own ship in a daze while these women tell him what to do. And I'm not saying it's wrong that they're telling him what to do because they're women. I'm saying it's wrong that these people are telling him what to do because he's allegedly the captain and is supposed to know how to run his own ship.
All of a sudden. But when Una is arrested because of her Illyrian roots, Pike and the rest of the Enterprise crew will be able to fight to keep Number 1's job on the Enterprise. Pike and Captain Patel may have trouble getting along.
They're showing Pike and a female captain.
Because of Una's arrest.
What?
Captain Patel is a woman who may become Pike's enemy in Season 2.
Well... again, we're seeing everything wrong with this version of Starfleet, right? We're seeing this version of Star Trek is just obsessed on having the Federation be the problem. The Federation has to be completely evil because they can't get their Section 31 show funded, paid for, or out there in any kind of meaningful way. We hear about Section 31 at every Star Trek rollout. It was announced at the same time as Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery has been around for about 8 years and 5 horrific seasons of absolute garbage. Let's hear a little more from Crime Recaps.
Instead of his lover. This is another smart move.
Now, I feel that we will find out that she is both, because in this Star Trek, you have to kind of hate fuck people into being your friends. Like there is no normality in this Star Trek whatsoever, and by that I mean there's no normal friendships. There are no normal people. Everyone's just angling to get some ass from everyone else in a way that's kind of cringy. And sometimes they fuck their way there, and sometimes they friend their way there, but there are no platonic friendships or normalness that we can see. Everything has a bizarre, unsexy sexual edge in NuTrek.
By Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the conflict between Batel and Pike will not be based on sexual inequality.
The word sexual bleeped again. It's just strange. The AI voice does not know that this is just a fine word. There's nothing wrong with that word. It's the most polite and appropriate scientific term.
Like the one between Kirk and Lester. Instead, it will be based on a moral disagreement.
I mean, this just sounds so stupid. We're just about halfway through here.
About the rights of genetically enhanced people.
All right, now genetically enhanced people and their rights. I mean, here's the thing. They're treated just like we treat them. Like they did something wrong, okay? In baseball, Alex Rodriguez was suspended for using performance enhancement drugs. Oscar Pistorius, the Blade Runner, he had some medals taken away because of the prosthetic limbs making him able to run faster than a normal person, and he was not supposed to be in the same kind of Olympics with with people who are abled, or whatever terms you want to use. And Oscar Pistorius, sitting in jail for murder. So let's not dwell on him too much. But steroid users, not allowed to be in professional sports, not allowed to compete in the Olympics. The amount of gold medal, if I could have a nickel for every gold medal taken away for steroid use, and I wouldn't need to work.
Star Trek hasn't always done a great job of telling stories that are truly diverse
That is ridiculous and a preposterous lie. They are now gaslighting us.
And fair, but the future looks very bright. Moving on to...
This is just the constant demonization of the original Star Trek is one of the things I hate the most about the NuTrek and the NuTrek creators. I hate your product.
The diverse cast gets more screen time to develop.
The diverse cast has done nothing but act immoral, lie, and screw each other over and screw each other.
Star Trek Strange New Worlds has made a show that combines the classic style of Star Trek, the original series,
just showing us the worst, most stupid moment here with Spock's brain. This is where their minds are at.
with the bigger stories and modern sensibilities of the newer show.
You know what? This is ridiculous. I mean, these Star Trek creators who hate Star Trek are gonna have a hard time convincing me that I need to listen to their drivel. And I've had enough of your video.
The show gives its diverse cast, not just the
re-showing
three
the
white
same
leads, a
things
lot of
they've
room
shown
to
before as they continue to verbally trash Gene Roddenberry's original Star Trek, something we all grew up loving.
grow, and it has a hopeful tone that has been missing from the world and
That is a lie. They thumbs up infanticide.
the franchise lately. Star Trek Strange New Worlds has the feel of old
Or juvenile aside. All right, now they've just said that old Star Trek is really, really bad, right? They have just spent a few minutes detailing the crimes of old Star Trek, and then listen to this turn of a phrase.
tone that has been missing from the world and the franchise lately. Star Trek Strange New Worlds has the feel of old Trek, but
All right, so somewhere in the middle there, they got lost because they were always wrong, but now it's just like it used to be. What the fuck does that mean?
it was made during the NuTrek era. This makes it a unique and important addition
And we're just seeing Ortega's terrible haircut again and again here. And at least they call it NuTrek, because it's not real Trek, I'll tell you that.
to the franchise. It looks like the diverse cast will also get a chance to develop their characters.
the third time they've said the diverse cast in just about 25 seconds.
And it'll definitely be interesting for us to see how they grow. This is a
So what they're saying is probably misinformation here. They failed to grow the characters again, and it will once again be anything but interesting. It will be dull once again.
welcome change for a franchise that has always tried to be ahead of the curve when it comes to representation.
See, now they're saying again in their double talk that Star Trek has always been just fine.
The 2022 show will be the first time this will happen.
And this is weird that they're talking about the 2022 show, because this was made just 5 days ago in 2023, and they're talking about a future season. But since it's been dumped into an AI text-to-speech app to be delivered, we have no inflection to really go on. So maybe if it had been a human, even one as imperfect as your pal, Admiral Teag, they could have done some inflection there to let you know how they were going with this statement.
Lastly, the show also changes a few things up in other aspects. It seems like Star Trek: Strange New Worlds is also able to blend the styles and moods of the two time periods.
Are they trying to say the two time periods being Kelvin and real Star Trek, or are the two time periods TV show and Kelvin? Because we have no less than 3 timelines, if not 5 timelines, going on in Star Trek right now.
The production design and the way the characters interact show that the original had a sense of optimism.
So the optimism is in the sets, remember that, not the stories or the dialogue.
And kindness, even though a lot
And the kindness is in the sets, not the dialogue or the stories.
of the character arcs are pretty dark, the show doesn't wallow in it.
Let's let them say that again. That was a massive contradictions.
Optimism and kindness. Even though a lot of the character arcs are pretty dark, the show doesn't wallow in it.
So it's optimistic again, but most of the character arcs are pretty dark. But it's okay because it takes light treatment of these dark subjects. It just hand waves them.
Also, Pike doesn't keep the terrible news about his future to himself.
No, everyone talks about their feelings in this show.
He tells his friends about it. When
No one is really a friend to Pike. They treat him like he's an idiot.
Uhura tells the senior staff about how her family died, she is understood and told to make the best decisions.
This has absolutely no meaning. What are they trying to say? That no one in Star Trek had empathy until now? That would be preposterous. Who would watch a show about characters that had no empathy, except fans of NuTrek?
For herself, the crew of this Enterprise is much safer than those on Discovery
Safe. They say safe so often.
or La Sirena, but they also live during the Federation's most powerful time.
I don't know what they mean here. The Federation seems to be significantly more powerful during the Next Generation era, to be honest.
The only bad thing about this positivity is that there is a gap between what people do and how they react, which
There is a gap between what goes on in this show and how we act like this show really is. This piece of NuTrek propaganda from our pals over at Crime Recaps has been nothing if just dishonest. It is absolutely dishonest about the way it is casting what's going on in the show, and it's self-contradicting over and over.
which was one of the problems with the original series. People don't usually
There weren't a lot of problems with the original series. Maybe one of the problems was they could have used some more money. You know, how do these people have so many more subs than me? How does Crime Recap have 2.4 thousand subs? 2,400 people sub this garbage, and I have just the 83 smartest people on YouTube, and that's it. And I want to thank all of you who have subbed, because you're the most loyal of subs. You keep coming back. You thumbs up my content, and you keep this poor Admiral going, because God knows with my mission to save Star Trek, I need all the help I can get. And I thank you all who have joined my fleet.
bounce back after seeing death or the terrible things that happen in space, but they do in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. This may change
Double talk.
the characters in the long run. Now, let's look at how Strange New Worlds has a
Let's look at how Strange New Worlds will increase diversity by having Nurse Chapel wear a catsuit.
Secret Kirk and Nurse Chapel connection. First
What the hell are they even talking about here? This is some nonsense. Let's find out.
up, Kirk and Nurse Chapel could potentially have something in common. In Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, James T. Kirk and Nurse Christine Chapel knew each other before they worked together.
Huh? All right. Nurse Chapel signed on to the Enterprise to try to have a chance to be reunited with her fiancé Roger Corby in the original Star Trek. That's why she joined on to the Enterprise after its mission was underway. She was a replacement crew member or part of an augmentation of the crew, because the number of crew does increase over the run of the show. They go from about 270 to like 400 people by the end of the show, but most of the time we hear about 300, 350 people to crew the Enterprise.
On the Enterprise, Kirk was first seen in Equality of Mercy, the Season 1 finale, when he was in charge.
He was in charge of the Farragut because of a variety of reasons, but this Kirk, not smart, not cool, presented as reckless, just being attacked and not being played by the handsomest or most appropriate-looking actor.
Of the USS Farragut instead of the Enterprise.
They say in charge, not captain, because they're playing games.
This was because Captain Pike had changed the past. In the first episode of SNW's first...
See, we don't know what they mean here by change the past. This is the past of the canon of the Star Trek that is outside of this, that has nothing to do with this. The real Star Trek with William Shatner, real Star Trek from 1966, real Star Trek like The Next Generation. It's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about real Star Trek like Deep Space Nine. They're talking about the past in a way that we cannot assess. We cannot trust what we hear on this channel. We just know that they're going to let a few things slip. They let slip that the movie had been changed to a Next Generation movie. That Kelvin movie up there on IMDb, that's probably all but done. That any Star Trek movie gets made at all is a long shot, but if there is one, it'll be a NuTrek movie with a Next Generation reboot cast.
Season, Memento Mori, it was shown that Nurse Chapel had also worked on the Farragut before. She wore the ship's emblem on her uniform on Starfleet Remembrance Day.
Why would anyone... who cares?
So, keeping this in mind, it's very likely that they already knew each other before.
Now, of course, we're getting to see Chapel in her catsuit, which is just fine while they talk about this, but they're not saying much now, are they?
Kirk joined the Enterprise. It's not clear if the crew members Chapel remembers are the ones who died in Kirk's USS Farragut disaster.
Right. Kirk, of course, in this continuity, is a terrible captain who's gotten a lot of people killed needlessly, but he still stays a captain.
But if they are, this would give Kirk and Chapel something in common during...
They already just said they had in common the fact they served together. I mean, the usage is just terrible.
Season 2 of SNW. With Kirk's arrival, Strange New Worlds moves closer to the timeline of Star Trek, the original series.
No, it moves closer to the events, but their timeline is completely fucked and makes no sense.
Where Kirk often found Chapel's love for Spock funny. It's possible that
I do not remember a single reference to Kirk thinking that was funny, or that really that she was in love with him. She had the hots for Mr. Spock, a totally different thing. Some of the things we hear here, just the way they talk about the past. If you hadn't seen these shows and you believed what they told you, you would think that Star Trek was like some kind of propaganda from Hilter.
The future captain of the Enterprise first heard about Chapel's feelings.
This is ridiculous.
For the Vulcan when he was working for Captain Pike. Up next, Kirk and Chapel's history on the USS Farragut.
Took them this long to get to the point here.
The original series, Season 2, Episode 13, Obsession, is about...
We just moved right on from 5 minutes of talking about how hateful Captain Pike used to be to talking about how great Chapel is. This is just bizarre propaganda.
About Kirk's time on the Farragut, and in that episode, he put the lives of the Enterprise crew in danger to stop a vampire-like creature that killed 200 officers.
That is the most preposterous way to say that he tried to avenge his comrades and take out a major threat. A threat that could kill off an entire starship and already had. It had shown its hostile intent time and again, and it was trying to kill more people. This is ridiculous, a ridiculous retelling of the events of Star Trek episode Obsession.
Is about Kirk's time on the Farragut, and in that episode, he put the lives of the Enterprise crew in danger to stop a vampire-like creature that killed 200 officers.
Yeah, the thing is that his crew didn't understand how important it was that he destroy the vampire-like creature because they thought he was personally feeling guilty about what happened. And while Captain Kirk did have some guilt, which was normal considering how many people died while he survived the Farragut, the attack on the Farragut by the vampire cloud, in the episode Obsession, they're concerned only about him as a person. They are not doubting their mission or their need to destroy the vampire cloud. The vampire cloud, a proven threat that had already killed.
Or half of the Farragut crew. This happened in 2257, 2 years before the end of Season 1 of Strange New Worlds.
This means nothing to us as information, really. It really doesn't.
Where we saw that Kirk is still serving on the Farragut.
The Farragut of the original continuity had Ensign Kirk as a phaser officer. So in 2 years, he rises to being one of the people who gets to sit in the big chair. It's preposterous. It's just ridiculous.
Earlier in the episode, Pike's changes to the TOS timeline led to Kirk becoming captain of the ship.
Right, that's the Kelvin continuity where they jump him from cadet to captain in one of the stupidest moves I've ever seen on screen.
Which is likely how he worked through his guilt and trauma from being a survivor.
Actually, no, they're talking about their own timeline, which is equally fucked.
Less is known about Nurse Chapel's time on the Farragut.
Because it's all just been snapped out of thin air just now.
Since it was only mentioned in SNW Season 1, Episode 4.
Okay, so again, this is made-up fanfic.
Memento Mori. Since she wears the Farragut symbol on her uniform to remember the people she's lost, it's likely that she was on the ship when it ran into the deadly entity.
I don't think anyone thought that through, and I think this is sheer conjecture. If anyone thought this up, it was after the fact.
Chapel, played by Majel Barrett, shows up briefly in Obsession, where she helps the latest victims of the entity without saying much about what happened in 2257.
Yeah, because nothing had happened. This is new canon. She didn't say anything except that she knew of this other attack. A Starfleet vessel was almost destroyed. It lost 200 members of its crew, and they're wrong about it being half. We don't know how many people were part of the crew of the Farragut. There were a lot of people on the Farragut. There could have been as many. There could have been as few as 80 or 90 survivors of the Farragut attack by the vampire cloud. The vampire cloud, a proven menace.
This is definitely a bit nerve-wracking, but Strange New Worlds could easily deal with it in its second season.
And we're seeing more horrible buzz cuts on some women who would otherwise be attractive.
Finally, Strange New Worlds Season 2 can set up
really the most effeminate haircut is the one the captain has.
Of Chapel and Kirk's friendship. In Obsession, Spock tells Dr. McCoy about the Farragut disaster when they
Alright, let's see if they get this right.
start to worry about Kirk's mental state. Kirk and Spock haven't met yet in SNW.
They've interacted, and I guess they haven't met in SNW, but this is also how meaningful is this?
So you never know. Nurse Chapel
We're again seeing Nurse Chapel in the cat suit that is majorly featured in this video.
Might be able to bring them together. Captain Pike wants Kirk on the Enterprise because he has seen that the universe is a darker place without the bond between Kirk and Spock.
Wait, he's seen something that hasn't happened yet? Was this something else that happened with him when he was smoking the Klingon space crack rock memory crystals?
On the Federation flagship. But if Chapel knows Kirk and knows about his sad past, she might change
Sad.
Spock's opinion of the cocky young officer.
He's presented as being way too cocky and really just not Kirk in any meaningful way.
In A Quality of Mercy, Kirk's brother
Quality of Mercy is a terrible title for an episode.
Sam says some things about him that aren't really nice.
Right, NuTrek trashes the legacy characters.
He calls him a pain in the ass, who
Right.
also doesn't like to lose.
As though that is a terrible trait. Everyone should want to lose.
Given what Kirk went through on the Farragut, it's easy to see why he won't accept a no-win situation.
That's just appropriated. It has no bearing on what we saw.
This is shown by the fact that he cheated on the Kobayashi Maru.
No. NuTrek Kirk cheated on the Kobayashi Maru. Original Kirk took the test and then changed the conditions of it. Does not say he hacked the computer and cheated. He got a commendation for original thinking, okay, in the original continuity. He appealed the test. His appeal was accepted, the test conditions were modified, and he was able to achieve a satisfactory outcome by rescuing the people on the Kobayashi Maru without getting his ship destroyed by the Klingons. Now, I recommend prayer. Klingons don't take prisoners, and neither do real Star Trek fans. Do not accept this show.
In Season 2 of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, young Kirk will need someone like Nurse Chapel, who knows what he went through on the Farragut.
Why?
To help him find his way.
I liked Kirk better when he accepted the fact that life was painful and used it as motivation to try to help other people, like he said in Star Trek V. I need my pain.
On the Enterprise. So the friendship between these two characters can definitely help explain why Kirk and Spock's friendship is so important.
It's important. Anyway, the reason why Spock, Kirk, and McCoy's friendship is important is because the characters represent the three different parts of our personalities: id, ego, and superego. And another thing is we got three platonic close friends showing us how friendship, loyalty, and sacrifice work together to make a great story. When you're loyal to your friend, you'll take risks and risk sacrificing yourself to help them out of loyalty. That's how friendship works.
That's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on Strange New Worlds fixing Captain Pike's?
I think that he said one thing that he immediately apologized for. And also, let's not forget, Captain Pike in the menagerie and cage is talking about other jobs he could have had, and when they have him fantasize about his other jobs, he's an Argelian slave trader. So, I mean, we just don't know where they were going with this botched original pilot that was rejected and thrown out there in desperation to buy time while they made more episodes of this Star Trek show that tended to have really, really good production for 1967 when people got it. All right, the 1962 Star Trek that was even more of a throwback that got recycled into the menagerie, it was all a mistake. It wasn't fit for TV. It wasn't ready yet. Desi Liu sent it back for more work. They knew it had potential. They knew it could be good, but they knew it wasn't ready. And the way these people have picked up the cage as their inspiration, something that wasn't good enough for TV, and gone forward with it, proving that the cage wasn't good enough for TV, have simply perpetuated a failed experiment. The Star Trek people, the real Star Trek people, Gene Roddenberry Star Trek people, adjusted their Star Trek. They listened to and respected the fans. Terry Matalas and his Star Trek staff of incompetent, hateful Ivy League grads who live in a glass bubble in Hollywood and have never met anyone unlike themselves or know anything of suffering, cannot bring us compelling or meaningful stories, so they attack the past. They are exactly the same people who brought us terrible stories like Rise of Skywalker and The Rings of Power. Do not accept this NuTrek propaganda. This has been another episode of Saving Star Trek with your buddy, Admiral Teag. I'm stronger with you than without you. We have to fight this woke Star Trek bullshit together. I would deeply appreciate it if you could hit the like or follow buttons and join me on my ongoing mission. Admiral Teag, signing off.